Hello, everybody. I'm Ce Eshelman. It's just about the 4th of July, and I thought I would jump on here and talk to you a little bit about how to prepare yourself and your children for the 4th of July, especially if you are parenting children from difficult beginnings, because they have a different experience of holidays than typical brained people. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Do you know that 34.8 million children have experienced trauma? That's half the children in the United States. Half. It's kind of a mind boggling statistic. Now, of course, we all went through COVID, and I consider that a trauma, and that might be what's in the statistic. I'm not sure. But if that were the case, then it would be 100%, right? It would be more like 70 million children experienced trauma if we included COVID in there. So yeah, I'm thinking it doesn't include that. But all the kids in the United States who are of school age in particular, but even before experienced trauma because of that pandemic. So early childhood trauma transcends economic, cultural, and racial demographics for sure, and because it can happen to anyone regardless of their background. Let me remind you of the definition of complex developmental trauma. That's repetitive negative experiences in early childhood that result in brain differences of toxic stress, which means survival brain injury and dysmaturity across the childhood of the child. Both are brain injuries that show up in environments like we all create in the United States on the 4th of July, for sure. So, brain injury is invisible to most people. But if you're living with a child who has complex developmental trauma, it's not invisible to you. But things like holidays, and especially the 4th of July holiday with all the fireworks and all the parades and all the parties, right? Americans celebrate our country's birthday with parades, picnics, cookouts. Fireworks are just the icing on the cake of the 4th of July. So, fireworks themselves set off randomly anywhere at any time can trigger survival brain, just like that, in a lot of people, not just our children. But in fact, it isn't just the fireworks, right? It's more than that. Our kids struggle with sensitive nervous systems that are wired differently than typical brains. That means that the noise, the bright lights, change in routines, crowds, the unpredictable happenings, sometimes we go from place to place to place, the new taste treats, right? Foods that they maybe haven't tasted before, new people, old people, new environments, and the general excitement, and then of course the transitions from one activity or one place to another is going to set your child into a neuro cascade of dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol, and that's going to flood your child's prefrontal cortex, which you're very familiar with, I'm sure, if you're living with it, which means your child's executive function, all their good decision making, all of their reasoning, all of their cause and effect, everything that they know goes offline when they're flooded with those stress hormones. So your child will be offline emotionally before the day even begins. And I think you just need to know that. And not only that, but the dysregulation that leads up to the day can be advanced for days in advance, right? And they linger longer after the fireworks have long been taken down and stored away for another year. That's happened, and then you're just still living with the after effects of the dysregulated brain. So, how can you prepare yourself and your child for the 4th of July? Well, here's the truth. It is what it is, right? I mean, we can get out our iced tea. Very happy to have some sweet tea right now to remind myself of the holiday. I have to be honest with you. The 4th of July, you know, nothing about where I live, but the 4th of July is not my favorite holiday. And that's because I have a lot of animals, and the 4th of July really, really, really frightens them. And when my children were younger, it was just like, whoa, dare I say it, an SHIT show. It really was. I mean, animals, kids screaming. It was just kind of a nightmare. And all of us wanted to crawl under the bed with the dust bunnies. We just all wanted to be under there together, protected. And it was somewhat of a nightmare. Now, you may not be having that. Not every family is, and you might. So if you are, let me know if you feel like already. So we're July 1. Already, are you experiencing some of the dysregulations and that goes on with the 4th of July? Give me a 1 in the chat if, yeah, absolutely, you're experiencing that. And a 2 if nope, hasn't started yet, because that'll just let me know where you're at. So, how do you prepare yourself and your child for the 4th of July? One, first of all, parents, put your flexibility hat on, right? Be prepared to go home if your child reaches maximum capacity way before you're ready to go. It's just the way it is when it happens. So prepare yourself for the disappointment by expecting it in advance. And if it doesn't happen, woo, bonus, it didn't happen. Consider yourself over prepared, which is the best, of course. Two, prepare your child. I like to call that front loading. Front load them for the happenings of the day. And if it's more days than just one, then the happenings in a row that are going to go on so that they can know not too far in advance, but a little bit in advance of what's going to happen. Like, where are you going? Who will you be seeing? What kids will there be? What kinds of foods will there be? How much food can they have? How many cupcakes can they have? How much sugar can they have on this day when everybody's having just a bunch of it? Um, so these are things you want to front load with. Also, you want to prepare for how to prepare your child's sensory body issues, right? Because they might be starting out with a cool morning, then there might be a parade where it gets a little warmer. You might go off to a place where there's water, and then they need different kinds of clothing for each one of those. And then maybe you're going to go to a barbecue in the afternoon where it remains hot, but they might be sticky from being in the water. And so you want to prepare, bring a lot of extra clothing. And then, of course, by the time fireworks are starting to happen, starts cooling down in some places, not all places, but in some places, and you want to make sure that you bring them things to bundle back up with. So these are the simple things that, if this is not your first rodeo, then you've been doing this for a long time. But sometimes it catches us off guard, the simple things we can do to make the 4th of July much, much easier. So here's another thought. You might take along comfortable things. So, for example, you might take some comfort foods for your kids in case you have a picky eater. So, that seems crazy sometimes when you're going to this big barbecue and there's going to be food all over the place. But if that isn't the kind of food your kids used to, and they're going to spend a lot of hours here, you want to make sure they have a few things that they like. If it's cheese sticks, great, bring them cheese sticks. If it's carrot sticks, great, bring those. If it's a granola bar, that's fine. Whatever it is that will make them feel like they have something to eat, because all that other food looks not to their liking. So that's another thing to think about. Also, bring along some stuffies, right? So when it gets to be sundown, when people start putting blankets around them and cuddling up to watch fireworks, then this is where the fear kind of rises, right? The sun is going down, it's getting darker. And while it seems really exciting and fun, and kids are going to be excited and having fun, also there's a little bit of ticking time bomb inside that little brain that is already a little bit too excited, right? So then the lights go down, the fireworks come up, the big sounds, big booms, depending on where you are, and your child might experience a lot of anxiety and fear right in that moment. So a good big squishmallow, right, to just hold in and wrap around them and cuddle up with you. That's the best way to spend the 4th of July if that's what you're involved in right there. So another thing is that sometimes we are out with people that we don't usually see, or there are children there who come from all over, and our kids aren't familiar with them. And if that's the case, it isn't always easy for our kids, or really any kid, but our kids in particular, because sometimes they feel a little awkward or a little self-conscious, or sometimes they're not self-conscious enough, right? And they just plow right in, and kids like, okay, I don't know. So it helps if parents sort of smooth the way for them, pave the way a little bit, play alongside for a bit, make easy conversations with different kids, help your kids bridge that until they have some familiarity with these new children, and then it makes for a better day. They can go off and play because you made that bridge for them. It's just the bridge. The bridge is hard for our kids because transitions are hard. New people are hard. And so they may plow right in, but then stand back. There are lots of different things we might see in our kids who really just don't fully understand how to create relationships in a smooth way. So, parents, also, I just want to encourage you to be very patient with the shenanigans that kids can kick up when there's a foreign environment or when they're overly excited, right? Because with excitement comes agitation and irritation. So remember, they can't do better when they're dysregulated. It's not that they won't do better, it's that they really can't. So if you can keep that mindset, then it will help you keep your own lid on when they get dysregulated in situations that just don't make sense to you, or maybe don't make sense to your in-laws or to your cousins or to your uncle, right? So some other things to keep in mind. These are my favorite things in the world. I think every parent needs to have a pocket full of these, which are those little orange construction um, earplugs, construction worker earplugs. I think just pockets full of those and hand those out to everybody. Everybody should get to have noise canceling earplugs. And then my favorite thing, of course, though, is noise canceling headphones. I like to have a pair myself because they're the bomb when the bombs are going off. Because I don't like to hear all that. It actually revs up my own nervous system. So if that's you, you might want to have a pair yourself, but definitely your kids might need some respite from all the noise during a whole day of excitement and festivities. So if you don't have those, because of course kids break those just like crazy or lose them like crazy, I get that. That's why those little orange ones are perfect because they don't cost very much and they're throwaway and forgettable and you can lose them and nobody really cares. Um, but if you don't have those, you can actually use, ear muffs. You could have your kids take um, sweatshirt jackets with hoodies so they could pull up the hoods and pull the drawstrings so they can close out some of the noise and hide a little bit. That's actually really an awesome thing to do for them. They like to do that anyway. As for what to actually do for the 4th of July, frankly, it's best if you go out into the country somewhere with fireworks, firework laws so that people can't have those random fireworks going off around you. And maybe you can see off in the distance the fireworks. That's a really great way to experience fireworks. Or you can go to a beach somewhere where the fireworks are going to be set off over the ocean. That's also really awesome sometimes. It's just nice to get into nature, but also to be far away from neighborhoods that might have just like these very unpredictable pops and cracks and bombs going off. I don't know about you, but that whole concept of bombs bursting in midair, that actually doesn't sound good to me. That doesn't delight me. I know for kids, they don't understand that. So they are delighted often by it, but some kids are not. So we want to just have that kind of patience with them and understanding that they might want to see it and participate, but also really not want to at the same time. So the further away, the better for viewing without fear. And you can even watch fireworks on TV. Did you know that? I kind of love that. I sort of love that in the same way that I love, the Yule log. I don't have to have a fire in the fireplace. I can just have the Yule log on the TV. That kind of works for me. So I don't know if what that means about me, but sometimes it's just easier. Um, Okay, so let's say you're staying at home for fireworks. Maybe it's in your backyard. So one of the things you can do is check with your neighbors, right? If you're in a neighborhood and you have neighbors all around you who might be setting off fireworks at random times, it might be a really good idea to check with them and see, when do you think you're going to be setting off your fireworks? Or do you have firecrackers? Is that part of your thing? Because my kids are kind of scared about that, and I want to be able to forewarn them when the festivities are going to start at your house. And then you can kind of prepare your kids. Hey, the Smiths over here, they're going to start their fireworks in a minute. And if we were in the backyard, we know that they're coming. We could probably see a few of them over the fence. Things like that, where we can give them predictability. And predictability is so important sometimes during these random firework moments. So front load your kids about safety because some kids are going to be really fearful and stay away from fireworks, and others are not going to be fearful enough. So it's okay. Just have a little sit down. It's front loading for safety because there isn't anything worse than holding a sparkler at the wrong end. And kids do that all the time. A lot of children get harmed by what things we think they should know how to use, or they're experimenting to see how hot that sparkler is. Well, I promise you, if you put your hand around the sparkler, it burns you. And kids sometimes they just don't know until they do it. So what you want to do is assure them with every ounce of your being that it will indeed burn them and that they shouldn't do it. So here's another thing that you can do to prepare is you could create a self-care toolkit. Like look through, here's the thing. You could put photo albums of pictures of past vacations and things your kids really enjoy to kind of up the volume on happy, right? Up the volume on, hey, I remember that. That's fun. It's also very distracting from random fireworks going off. You can listen to your favorite music, sometimes music loud in the house that they love, that they can dance to, and you can have a kind of dance party, sort of drowns out all those fireworks around. And that can be just really a good idea. The other thing is that you can enjoy the fragrance of fresh pine, lavender, cinnamon, or peppermint, right? You can diffuse that in your house to just bring down that nervous system. So, the other thing you can do is spend time playing with or grooming your dogs or other pets with your kids. That's very soothing to their nervous systems. And, animals don't love the 4th of July either. So, it'd be really nice for them as well. If your kids are going to need to go to bed before the big fireworks start, then do them a favor and let them sleep with eye masks on, or close their blinds really tight and maybe put a blanket over the blinds so that the light stays out. Really darken the room a whole lot so that they can get to sleep. And don't be afraid to, if you have been giving melatonin, don't be afraid to give it, right? Because they need to sleep through all these noises rather than getting anxious and fearful every time a firecracker goes off. So, parents, listen, accept your child's reactions, even if they seem too big, right? They seem too big for the situation. They might have very big feelings, and it's always best to accept rather than trying to get them to stop, right? Getting them to not have big feelings or telling them that they're being a baby or they're not being a big enough kid. You know what I mean? That's really not going to help. It actually makes it a little bit worse. And also, it feels bad to them because they can't really manage their emotions, especially when they have cortisol and adrenaline flooding their prefrontal cortex. So sometimes, in these moments, we can get a little bit dysregulated ourselves and we can say really unkind things when our kids are embarrassing us in front of like the neighbors or our relatives. And we can actually end up making a big deal of what really is nothing. All kids have moments. Our kids have a few more moments than others, but they're just moments like every kid. They're at regular moments of upset, but ours happen more frequently. That's all. Um, and and even though it seems like nothing to us, it's clearly something to them. And so if we can honor it, right? We can empathize with their fear or their upset rather than denying their reality and telling them, just just get over it and run off and play. Because that is not in the best interest of that child who really needs to be seen and understood in the moment so that they can actually calm back down. And so then I have a couple of little practices for you. Like always, breathing slowly, inhaling 7 counts in, hold your breath for 4 counts, and then blow out for 8 counts. That is the best patterned breathing for regulating your system. But you know what? Kids usually hate that. So if your kid isn't good at that or doesn't like that, hasn't liked that in the past, they're really not going to like it when they're dysregulated either. So don't worry. How about you go ahead and do that breath for yourself so that you can survive the whole thing better? That's what I like, right? That breathing actually does work for parents. So pull that out for yourself rather than trying to get your child to do it. And sometimes kids will actually mimic you if you start the breathing process. So here's another thing. If your child really gets overcome by it all, overwhelmed, and they just start freaking out, for example, they want to go home, they're screaming and crying. And let's say, I remember once this happened with my children. We were in a big park and there were big fireworks and water and so many people, and we're parked in a parking lot that's just filled with cars. And my kids just really started freaking out when the fireworks started. And I had no problem leaving early, but it was so crowded that, I mean, it took us probably 30 minutes to get to the car. And then once we were in the car, probably all the cars we were seeing leaving were all the kids who were dysregulated and needed to go home. But it was like a traffic jam from heck, right? It was terrible. And so, you know, that's hard. So if you have that situation, here is a really good practice with them. Practice the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's a sensory exercise to feel centered and grounded and calm. So it's simple. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can smell, and 1 good thing you're grateful for. And what that does is just kind of calms that nervous system a little bit, and it takes your mind off the thing you're afraid of. So, folks, those are my 4th of July holiday tips for enjoying this holiday in particular with children for difficult beginnings. Remember, your regulation is the most important thing when your child is slipping their lid. So, do the breathing exercises, do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 yourself to calm yourself down if you need to. Your co regulation skills will make or break the holiday. They really will. So I hope you have a really fun time. I hope this is completely unnecessary and you don't really need it, and that you have great memories of the 4th of July. So remember, your love matters where more than love is required. So bye for now.